Mr. President.
Senator from New Hampshire is recognized.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that my Defense Fellow, Ashley Carline, and Pearson Fellow, Megan Tetrick, be given floor privileges for the remainder of the 117th Congress.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also originally planned to come to the floor this afternoon to ask unanimous consent to support the nomination of Mark Gittenstein to be U.S. Ambassador to the European Union. Mark is a qualified candidate to represent the U.S. with our most important trade and security relationship. He's already served our nation as U.S. Ambassador to Romania. He's deeply familiar with the geostrategic needs of our Central and Eastern European allies, and he has spent over 25 years working on energy issues. This experience is going to be critically important in responding to Russia's weaponization of gas flows to Europe. And as the U.S. confronts challenges around the world, we need to convey our firm commitment to our partners and our alliances. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to move forward with this unanimous consent request because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle can't seem to muster anyone to come down and object to my unanimous consent request. It's hard for me to understand why they have an objection to Mr. Gittenstein when they're not even willing to come to object, and we know they're here. His confirmation would be important to advance our bilateral conversations on shared national security interests, such as this week's dialogue between the United States, the EU, on China. But for these conversations to make meaningful progress in addressing our national security interests, we need our diplomats and State Department officials at the table. I had the privilege of leading a bipartisan delegation to the Halifax Security Forum 2 weeks ago. And we had 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. One of the things we heard from our allies was that there is a real impact by having the lack of ambassadorial confirmations in countries, particularly in our allies' countries. In the absence of U.S. representation, they're really questioning our commitment to our bilateral relationship. In addition to Mr. Gittenstein, there are over 50 other State Department nominees waiting confirmation on the floor. Now, if our colleagues on the other side of the aisle really shared the concerns about Russia and China's growing malign influence in the world that threatens the values we've fought so hard to advance, they would lift those holds without delay. They would understand that it's important for our national security to have ambassadors in these critical posts around the world. I'm deeply disappointed that our Republican colleagues have opposed the confirmation of Mr. Gittenstein's appointment to the European Union. And I find it strange that at a time when we should be swiftly confirming our ambassadors so that we can engage with our allies and address challenges like China and Russia, that what we're hearing from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle is they want to hamstring our national security and play into the hands of our adversaries. Now, I understand that some of my Republican colleagues have decided to hold up dozens of ambassadorial nominees because of this administration's handling of Nord Stream 2. I don't think I need to remind anybody that I have long been opposed to Nord Stream 2. But this opposition is precisely the reason that we should be appointing an ambassador to the European Union, because without an ambassador, we have been absent in critical conversations on sanctions, on trade, on security, and on energy. And without an ambassador, we are limited in our ability to push for further sanctions to address Russian aggression, especially with our European allies. Without an ambassador, we can't effectively engage our allies. We are actively playing into Putin's hands by creating opportunities to sow division and discord within the transatlantic community. Mr. President, partisan politics should end at the water's edge, as it has for decades in the United States. I urge those few Republicans on the other side of the aisle who are holding things up to stop this needless obstruction. The U.S. is stronger and safer when our diplomatic corps, those individuals who support Americans and U.S. foreign policy around the world, are supported by capable, Senate-vetted, and confirmed ambassadors. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
The senator from
parliamentary inquiry, and this is impromptu because I wasn't aware of this until the senator from New Hampshire just spoke. Is it the case that a senator making a live UC on the floor to advance a nomination can be blocked from making a live UC by someone who will not even agree to appear on the floor of the Senate?
It's a courtesy between senators.
I've learned something new about Senate rules that I wish I did not know. I yield the floor.
Senator from Arkansas is recognized.
Yeah, for the record, I would object on behalf of anyone who's not here, so the question is moot. If the Democrats really wanted all these nominees to go forward, maybe you should have talked to the president about the fact that he caved in on Nord Stream 2 sanctions. I know the senator from New Hampshire has been strong in that, but she could have stopped any single bill or nominee going forward by insisting that the president impose Nord Stream 2 sanctions. Now we're in a situation where all of Western Europe is hooked on German gas, and Vladimir Putin is about to invade Ukraine, and the best we can get is stern words. So yes, I would object on behalf of any senator who's not present, and I don't even know what I'm objecting to.
Senator from New Hampshire is recognized.
Just to respond to Senator Cotton, and I know that he shares my view about Nord Stream 2, but I think sadly at this point we are in a position where by refusing to allow our diplomats to be in place, we no longer have the ability to negotiate. And in fact, the gas has not started running in Nord Stream 2. The certification of that pipeline has been delayed, and we have a new administration in Germany that we have heard a number of members of that administration express serious reservations about Nord Stream 2. So I'm not sure that right now, given the need for transatlantic unity, the need for us to be able to work with our European allies on whatever Russia might do on Ukraine is the best time for us to send a signal that we don't really care what the administration is doing on this issue, and we don't really care what the Germans say about it. All we care about is making the point on Nord Stream 2, when what we really need to be doing is working together with our European allies, because what Putin wants more than anything else is to sow dissension between the United States and our European allies. And by this action, he is doing exactly that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. President.
Senator from Arkansas is recognized.
For 8 months, any Senate Democrat could have stepped forward and demanded the president impose Nord Stream 2 sanctions. For 4 years, we stood together and cast votes with 85 votes or 90 votes or 95 votes in defense of Nord Stream 2 sanctions when the Democrats were discovering their inner Jack Ryan when it came to Russia. But now that Donald Trump has gone from office and Joe Biden's in office and he is appeasing Vladimir Putin at every turn by extending the New START treaty and by not imposing sanctions on Nord Stream 2, suddenly the Democrats have reverted back to their old conciliatory ways towards Russia. The simplest way to deter an invasion of Ukraine, the simplest way to deter Russian aggression is to draw clear red lines and enforce them, something that Joe Biden will not do, something that apparently the Democratic senators will not force him to do.
Mr. President, I just have to take real umbrage at your suggestion, Senator Cotton. I'm the one who Vladimir Putin refused a visa to get into Russia. because of my opposition to Russia and to what Putin was doing. He didn't deny you a visa to get into the country. So don't talk to me about how I've not been tough enough on Russia, because that dog won't hunt. The fact is, during the Trump administration, he spent 4 years before he would sanction Nord Stream 2. Finally, right before he left office, he put sanctions on. The only reason the Western companies that were working on Nord Stream 2 stopped their work is because of the threat of sanctions, not because Trump did anything to enforce those sanctions. So there is plenty of blame to go around, and it doesn't help for you or me or anybody else to start throwing personal insults over what's going on around Nord Stream 2.
Mr. President, I did not make any personal insult. I simply observed that for 4 years in the Trump administration, we repeatedly took action on a bipartisan basis to try to stop Nord Stream 2. One of the reasons we didn't have a vote on amendments last week on the defense bill is because the Democrats were carrying water for the Biden administration, refusing to have a vote on Nord Stream 2. And that's consistent with the Biden administration's record on Russia, which can get all chesty in its rhetoric, but always appeases Vladimir Putin. One of the first actions he took was to give a no-strings-attached extension of the New START treaty, something that Donald Trump never did, the very first priority of Vladimir Putin. The second priority was Nord Stream 2. We've been trying to have votes in this Senate all year long, and we haven't had them because the Democrats want to insist on a vote because Joe Biden doesn't want it.